Thank you, Anja, for being with us today.
Of course.
Do you want to just start by introducing yourself? So, because we're taking a recording and folks
Yeah,
may be watching this in the future as well, so they have good framework.
of
Thank
course. So, hello everybody, and thank you for making some time for me this morning. I'm happy to share what I might know about international student services. My name is Anja Abney. I am originally from Germany. I have lived in the U.S. for over 20 years. I came here as a student, actually as an au pair. I ended up as a student going through my undergraduate, graduate, and doctorate degree in the U.S. And I found my passion in working with international students. So I have done recruitment. I have been a director of international student services in 2 different schools. I have been a PDSO doing immigration advising. I am now the senior assistant director of international recruitment at Fordham University in New York City, as well as an independent counselor. And I work closely in immigration advising, visa advising with international students. So as Yasmin said, I met her through independent counseling, but as well as bringing her onto the Metro tour. We did a tour with international counselors. When was it? End of July, which seems like forever ago, but it was just a minute ago. And we hosted about 24 counselors, and we met that way. And there seems to have been a lot of questions about international student advising, as well as employment and the entire process of what do international students have access to in the United States when they come to study here? How does all that work? So we together thought that maybe this would be a good idea. We can talk about it. I can share my experiences and what I know about the process and immigration, and then maybe you can share with your students as you advise them on what their possibilities and opportunities are. One thing with immigration in this country always is it depends on who is in charge and how things change every 4 years as we elect somebody different. So immigration has been my passion for many years, so I'll be happy to share with you what I know. So I will email my slides as I'm having some technical difficulties this morning to Yasmin, and she can email them out to you guys. So as you take notes, if you have questions, we can do questions at the end, but I'm just going to start basically with the beginning, which is the F1 visa process. So as you know, every student that comes from
Anja,
yeah.
I don't want to interrupt, but if you did want to email them now, I can actually reflect it on the screen, so if that's easier for you. So feel free to do it either way.
Let me try real quick.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
guys. I keep talking and try to save this. So speaking about the F1 visa, as I'm sure most of you know, the F1 visa is what international students need. That is obtained through an I-20, which is given to a student by the university that accepts them. That form I-20 then needs to be, sorry, I'm very bad at multitasking, clearly, then needs to be taken to a consulate in their home country in order to be issued a visa. It is not really that complicated to get a student visa. It is a very clear-cut and straightforward process. However, there are always reasons, why a visa could be denied. Usually those reasons are things like not proving ties to your home country. So often a student will get a denial saying, you've been denied, but there's no reason. And usually that is depending on when a student goes to an interview and says something like, well, I want a long-term stay in the US, become a lawyer or work, or maybe, try different things. That will be an immediate denial. They have to ensure in the interview that they say that they want to bring the education back to their home country. Whether that is true or not kind of is irrelevant. But it is a non-immigrant purpose visa. It is meant to come to study, not to eventually stay in the US. So that's always very important. I do a lot of workshops on F1 visa interviews, so students get better prepared for walking into an interview with an immigration counselor, as those things can be very scary and intimidating. From personal experiences, I know that those people sometimes are, asking questions that students aren't prepared for. It should be a really short 2 to 3 minute interview. The most important thing is students have to bring financial documents that they are able to support themselves, in the United States that they can pay for a year of study after scholarships have been taken out. And those documents will be verified by the immigration officer, as well as, again, saying, you know, I'm coming to the US for education. I want to improve my studies. And after that, I want to return to my home country and take that education with me. So those are the number one reason for denial, are either not proving finances or not proving ties to your home country. So that's very important to remember. So again, there are a lot of visa F1 regulations, the way that students stay in status, they have to be enrolled full time. You know, they can't just take a break and start to travel, you know, they're here for school. So every campus should have or will have what we call an International Student Service Office. And that office will be in charge of that student's I-20 and their record. Oh, there it is. Thank you so much, Yasin. So you can go on to the next one if it's, I think it's a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that office is basically in charge of maintaining the student status. So they will ensure that, you know, the student is enrolled full time, that the student is reporting their address to the office. But that's also the office the student will go to for any type of cultural adjustment advice, anything regarding employment. It is really their number one resource on campus when it comes to their status and seeking employment. So I know before we recorded this, we talked a little bit about things like the difficulty or, you know, how to get a social security card. So let's talk a little bit about employment. There are two ways an international student can be employed while in the United States. And they're not hugely different, but they can be taken at different times. So first, let's talk about optional practical training. So OPT is something that the student is entitled to that can be taken either during their studies or after their studies. So OPT allows a student to work full-time in a field related to their major. So if anybody is taking pre-completion OPT, that means they're working full-time during their school year. I never recommend that because it will take away from their pre-completion OPT. The amount a student gets at OPT, if that's not STEM related, which is different, is 12 months total, 12 months of working full time. So if I get a job that says September through November, I want you to work full time, a student has to apply for pre-completion OPT if they're still enrolled in school. And those 2 to 3 months will come off of those 12 months in the end. So that's very important to know. The best way for me to recommend OPT would be to wait to work full-time until after they graduate and then receive full-time employment for 12 months in total, because it gives them a better work experience, a better opportunity, hopefully, if they choose to, be sponsored for a work visa. So I always hold OPT for after graduation. So OPT is not, again, that hard to obtain. It is basically the student has to be in valid F1 status, meaning they completed their studies, they have their degree, they did not violate their status, and they will apply for OPT through their International Student Service Office. So again, they would need to go make an appointment with the office, fill out the paperwork. OPT is an application that goes through the Immigration Services Office, so it is not approved by the school, but the school will help put the application together. There's a fee, of course, with everything else with immigration, they have to pay for it. Everything will be mailed off. I always recommend to apply for OPT 3 months before a student wants to start, because it takes a little while, as everything does, to get it approved and to get the card in the mail. They will need the work authorization card in their hand to start their employment. I would give that about 90 days so they can apply 90 days in advance before they graduate. So they need to make that appointment with that International Student Service Office. While they are in OPT, they have to find employment within 90 days of the start date. So if their start date would be August 1 to start employment, they will have to find employment within those 90 days and report their employment with the Office of International Student Services at their school. So it is for us as a school to then report to Immigration Services that yes, this student is employed, this is where they work, because if they do not work, they would have to leave the country and return home within those 90 days. Because the purpose of OPT is to work. So they can't just stay in the country and travel around and say, oh, I have this card and I'm allowed to legally stay in the country. I just got my I-20 extended. It has to be work related. So it's important that they find employment. Now, how do they find employment? That can be a scary aspect as well for international students. Most American companies are sort of hesitant. They don't know how it works. Every career service center should be well equipped to advise a student on how to get an internship. And OPT is basically an extension of an internship. It is 12 months of full-time work. So they should work with the career services office. They will have usually databases on what companies in the area hired students for OPT. That does not, dictate that they will get a work visa after that, but at least it gives them 12 months of work experience. Sometimes then students will go on to graduate school if they can't find full-time employment, or they have a company that will sponsor them for a work visa. So those are all opportunities that they have after OPT. And OPT will be given for every degree earned, meaning you can do OPT after your undergraduate degree, you can do OPT again after your graduate degree. You want to keep going, you can do OPT again after your doctorate if you want to. So that is something that goes with every degree. It's not just a one-time shot. And then, of course, there's STEM OPT, everybody's favorite. Every student always asks me, what do you have STEM OPT majors? Most schools do. These are majors dictated by the government. So not everything is a STEM coded major. You would have to ask the school specifically, is your marketing and design a STEM major? If it is visual design, then yes, usually it is a STEM major. Is your economics a STEM major? Usually they are. Of course, any science will be a STEM major. So the schools will have those codes, and
the design is different, but
the codes will be on the I-20, and they will give the students the opportunity to then apply for a 24-month OPT extension after their original 12 months have been completed. Again, the 12 months will be approved originally on their OPT, and then they would have to file for an extension for another 24 months if they work in a STEM field. Again, that has to be approved by immigration. The STEM OPT is a little bit more involved, as it requires the company to fill out a work progress plan that has to be submitted to immigration, and they do that virtually, showing what it is that the student actually does for the company and what their progress is. Do they do a good job? So that is something that is done by the company, because again, this is now a 3-year work plan done with immigration in conjunction with the company. So a little bit more involved, a little bit more specific, but in high demand by the US government, as we don't have enough of our domestic students going into the STEM field. So this is highly sought out by international students. And when we are on the road, we do take a list of major codes with us. So for Fordham, I have a list of what is a STEM field. So when a student asks me specifically on the road, I will look, because there are a lot of them, and make sure that that falls within that category, as most students will seek the three-year OPT in total for the STEM field. And again, it gives you a better chance to sort of, fall into the H-1B work authorization category. If you have the 3 years of work experience, most companies in the STEM industry will be more likely to sponsor you for an H-1B visa, which of course is a whole nother process. But the OPT STEM extension is certainly something nice that the government has given us for our students in the science field to stay longer in the country and to get more work experience. So those are both used after a student graduates. Sometimes a student will ask me, well, can I work while I'm in school because I need to make money to support myself? Yes, they can. They can do what we call CPT, which is curricular practical training. So CPT is something the government offers to a student to get experience while they are enrolled. Every school is only allowed to approve CPT after their freshman year, because the first year is for a student to study. It's for the school to see, is the student capable? Is the workload okay? So they cannot work and study on CPT their first year. Now they can work on campus their first year without any type of approval from the government. Every student is allowed to work on campus and do student worker jobs. That's totally fine. CPT is sort of geared towards getting an internship outside of the school while you are in school. The maximum hours a student can work on CPT is 20 hours per week. So sometimes a student will say, okay, if you give me a full scholarship for tuition, can I do CPT and work on campus and support myself for room and board? It won't be that much money. It won't be money for them to live off. It will basically be money to spend on incidental. So I always say you should have a job, you should have an internship your second year to get work experience, but to also have money to go to the movies, you know, hang out with your friends, put some money aside for a plane ticket home. But it won't be enough money to really sustain a living environment because 20 hours a week is the maximum. So it's a part-time job. It has to be, again, tied to their major. The nice thing with CPT is it does not get approved by immigration. It gets approved by the school. So it's a much quicker process. So as long as I'm a marketing major and I'm enrolled in marketing courses and I've been offered a part-time job at a marketing company, you know, down the street, I can do that. I have to take that to my Office for International Student Services. They will add it to my I-20 and you'll be good to go. So there's no waiting period. This can be done immediately by the Office of International Student Services, which is nice. But again, it has to be related to the major. So can't be working in a restaurant as a waiter, you know, unless hospitality is the major, then maybe we can word that in a way where it makes sense. But it should really be something that gives you work experience for the end of your studies. Now, during the summer, a student can work full time on CPT and again, not touch that OPT time. However, they also have to enroll in a course, a summer course related to their major. So it is sort of a catch-22 because yes, you can make money full time, you can work 40 hours a week, but you also have to pay for a course. So that's, you know, sometimes people don't know that they have to be enrolled in a class, but they do, because again, it has to be related to their studies, but they could really make some good money and get some good experience throughout the summer working full time. So the differences between OPT and CPT are pretty clear. Again, OPT, I would save it for, you know, after studying, after completing the degree. CPT is something you can do during your studies. OPT, much longer approval process as you have to go through immigration, and then CPT kind of just being something that, you know, you can do with your international student office, which is nice. So again, it has no implications on the visa. Both are approved by the government. As long as a student is in good F1 status, there should be no issues with that. So some of the questions I get most frequently are things like, you know, can I work part-time during my academic year on an F1 visa? So yes, like I said, after your freshman year, you can do CPT. You can do it part-time, 20 hours a week, as long as you have a job related to your major. What are the steps to apply for OPT? Again, you work with Immigration Services as well as your International Student Office to put the application together. Do it 90 days before you want to start to make sure you get that card in the mail. How long does it take to receive the card? That depends on the postal service. I would say about 30 to 60 days usually. It is mailed regular mail without a tracking number. So I always recommend students make sure the address that they put is an actual address, not like a dorm, but you know, maybe a friend's house, like a real address, because if that cards get lost, then you have to reapply for a new card. Can students switch employers during their STEM OPT extension? Yes. But again, that has to be reported to the Office of International Student Services, who has to report it to immigration that the employer is new, because there is a follow-up process and it does not start over on the OPT time. So if for 1 year you worked at company A, for year 2 to go to company B, you're not going to get that 1 year back. It's still only a 3-year period in total. What are the consequences if you violate your visa? That depends. You could be deported. The number one reason why F1 visas are revoked currently in the United States is drinking and driving and getting caught. So drinking under the age of 21 is a big no-no in the United States. And the State Department just released numbers that a DUI is the number one reason for F1 visas to be revoked. So that should not be a thing. You know, fake IDs are everywhere, but I think it's important to remember that is a very, very hard no for the justice system in the United States. So one thing I will say that I find very important is that when you work with your students on schools, I know, you know, people research locations and majors and academics and, you know, academic support services, health support services. It is just as important to make sure that the school has a good international student service office, because this is their number one resource. So a lot of schools are very hands-on. They're always available, which I think is important. Some offices do everything online. You know, email me, here's a form, and you never really get to meet a human. You can find that out by either meeting with that office directly or have a student that's interested in a school reach out to a current international student. Any admissions office will give you,
The thing
you
with
know, a
this one,
peer
you
to
check.
reach out to,
It's
because I
nice.
think it's important that they know that those services are there, that those students have a place to go, um, with work questions, with cultural adjustment questions, with reverse cultural adjustment when they have to return to their country because they couldn't find employment. You know, those are very hard things to do. Going back to your country after 4 or 6 years is a very challenging time. So a lot of offices now offer reverse cultural workshops, so that they can actually, go back to their home countries and be part of their own culture and families, because that can be very challenging. So researching those offices and the services that are provided, I think, is just as important when choosing a university as, to be honest, the academics, especially after COVID. So that's all I know.
Thank you. Maybe I can remove it from, remove the presentation from share. There's a couple of questions. Will that be okay with you?
Of course.
Thank you. So we have a couple questions.
Sure.
Susie wants to know, does the OPT STEM extension process happen through ISS office or with immigration?
You can work with ISS, but the approval comes from immigration.
Okay. Thank you. And then how do you obtain a social security number?
How do you get a social security number? Everybody's favorite thing. Well, it's the same as a driver's license. So again, to get a social security number, you first have to have an employment offer, which can be a job on campus. So that is the easiest way to get a social security number. Find a job on campus, then go to your International Student Service office. And what they will do is they will write you a letter that, yes, this is an international student currently in status, and they will be working on campus. Then you have the fun of going to the Social Security office, which is everybody's favorite place. You take that letter, you take your I-20, your passport, and there you fill out an application and you leave everything with them, and then you wait. Sometimes it only takes about 7 days. Sometimes it takes 30 days. Unfortunately, you can't start working until you have that social security number, because you won't be able to get paid, because that's how taxes are being taken out. So it is a process that you do in conjunction with the International Student Service Office, but the first step would be to find on-campus employment.
Thank you for that. I do have a question. You touched upon a very interesting subject at the end. We are gatekeepers for a lot of students and suggesting where they should apply, and we make recommendations, obviously. How do we tell if an international office is functioning at what level of support? And is there best practices? Who's driving those best practices in your realm?
So I when I ran my own international student service office, I was a very hands-on director. So I always had an open door policy, and I was always told it's too much. there's too much, hand-holding. But I think that just depends on the student. If it's a larger school, most of the things will be done online. There will be a lot of appointment scheduling. There will be a lot of submit your documents here, come pick up your new I-20 with, CPT here. I prefer an office that has open office hours, and you can find out those things on the website. Or again, like I said, if they reach out to a current international student, get their feedback. Like, what do you think about that office, right? Do you feel like you're being supported? Do you feel like there's a place for you to go? What kind of programming do they do? Do you feel like you're involved in the community? Those kind of things. Best practices, I think, again, a lot of it comes from the director or the provost on how involved, hands-on they want their staff to be. I do think we all see at Fordham, we're having we're having a new president. We're revamping everything in that regards, which is nice, because I am still, I've only been here for a year, so I see a lot of opportunity for growth for that office. And having done it for so long, the president is really involved in getting feedback. So again, after COVID, I think there has to be a lot more face-to-face than just the online support, again, because students don't know. Right? Some students have never left home. Some students have been in their house for a year doing online learning, and they need help navigating a new academic system, a new culture, working, getting a social security card, getting a driver's license. All that in the US is, bureaucracy and paperwork and having the right documents. One time you miss a document, you have to start all over, make another appointment, go back. So I think there has to be some face-to-face and a lot of student support on that side from that office. And again, you can find that out by either requesting a meeting with an international student advisor and talk to them, or have the students just do some background digging with their peers.
Thank you for that. So Harvey and Melissa have questions. I'm going to start with Harvey's. It's a little bit shorter. For the summer CPT, you did mention they have to be enrolled in a course. Can that be on connected to their major, that is? And is it okay if it's online?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'll read Melissa's question next. Her question is on the OPT. Can the international student search for a job through Handshake? Which, if you guys don't know that, we should talk about what Handshake is. However, earlier than the OPT application window of the 90 days prior to graduation, which you mentioned, the fall of senior year, and line something up before applying for OPT. So
yes.
You talk to the company and then you apply.
Yes, 100%. So Handshake is a system that a lot of schools use that is an online system for finding jobs on campus.
Okay.
And often, like at Fordham, you use Handshake, and there are also companies that will only hire Fordham students as interns because they have some affiliation with Fordham. So it is good to go on Handshake or any career service website that your school is using to find, number one, on-campus jobs, but also internships. So I have students now that are graduating in December that already have OPT positions lined up, but they're very clear on the fact that they can't start until after they graduate. But yes, you can absolutely line something up before you start. Just make sure the company knows you need, to wait until after you graduate. But at that point, then apply for OPT right away at the 90 days before, and then you have your card and you're good to go.
So I'm going to call that a hack.
A hack, yes. It's a way to cheat the system.
I love Susie's question. What tools are available to know what companies are hiring F1 students? Because this is a problem for all of us,
Yes, no doubt. So again, like I said, career services should have a database for OPT employment. If they don't, then it's something I think the students should suggest, right? So that's what most schools have. Again, you do it through networking with your peers, anybody that's graduating. If you're an English major, you have a friend from England that's an English major, where did they work? Sometimes it's just as simple as explaining to a company what OPT is, or have them actually meet or call, an international student service office. It's, again, an internship, basically, right? It's a full-time internship because you're not getting a contract for multiple years. But that's really something you should work with career services. But there are also websites out there. There are people on LinkedIn, for example, that do just that. They help students find OPT employment, H-1B employment, or they have, networking contacts where they can get you in contact with people. But yeah, it is still a bit dramatic as companies don't understand how immigration works, and they're very scared of the H-1B process and how much does it cost and how does it work. So sometimes it's just educating, and the student can certainly do that, but also the international student service offices can call or meet with them on the phone and just explain that you're not committing to anything. You're just hiring them for the year, like an intern, giving them experience. So
Thank you. Thank you. Those are awesome questions. Also, feel free to remove yourself from mute and ask directly. We're just chatting at this point.
May I just, Anja, I think you just saved my student. So I have a student who is on OPT. He graduated from Sacred Heart, moved to Miami. Money is not an object, and he decided he's just gonna see if he gets a job, and if not, he's gonna apply to grad schools.
There you go. That's the spirit.
So that's not going to work, right? I think he has 30 days on his OPT. So
yes.
If I heard you correctly, he needs to find a job or he needs to leave the country, correct?
Correct. He should have already applied for graduate school. Sometimes you have that little bit of a window. But yes, so, and again, he should just find a quick job, even if it's part-time, it doesn't have to be full-time while he's on OPT. Something related to his major, and then maybe apply for graduate school for January.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, only this alone was worth this meeting, but there is a wealth of information. Thank you.
Of course.
That's great.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Anja, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a quick question about a student who has graduated from her bachelor's degree, undergrad degree, and then she continued on to her grad school. And she also completed her master's degree. So the F1 visa 5-year period was about to complete and was about to finish. And she started her OPT.
Mhm.
And during her OPT program, the F1 5-year visa expired.
Mhm.
So she, as long as she doesn't leave the country, she's okay. But she wants to come visit home and go back. Is she, as far as I know, she needs to apply for F1 extension, and she's able to do that while she's on the OPT program. But she has to leave the country, come home, and reapply. Is that correct?
Correct. So her I-20 is good, right? She's an OPT. She has her card. Her I-20 is valid. If her visa has expired and she wants to go home, she has to go home and apply for a new visa. For that, she needs her I-20 and she needs an employment letter from where she is doing her OPT that she is currently employed, her EAD employment card with the end date, and apply for a new visa. I honestly never recommend it because that is a 50-50 shot. You don't know how long it's going to take to get the visa. You don't know what the guy is thinking that's doing the interview. Like, why are you here? Why aren't you working? You only have a year. Why are you taking, a break and going home to visit your family? Like, those are all tricky things because it is only a 12 months, visa extension or I-20 extension. But, if she's desperate to see her family, sure, I would go for it. But, it's maybe bring your family here if possible. But yes, she would have to reapply at a consulate, at a U.S. consulate in her home country for that visa. So she should also talk her international student office and make sure she has all the documents before she goes to be best prepared, her transcripts, her diploma, everything she might need that they might ask for before this is going to be a long drawn out process, just because you never know what you're going to get.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Perfect. Patricia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is, do you often see that an undergraduate student from China with an interest in aerospace engineering might be kicked back for his F1 visa? And this is at the undergraduate level, not at the graduate level.
Okay.
And then two, so for colleges that specialize in OPTs, in co-ops like Drexel, where you go to school for the year, then you take a year off and work. What I understand is that they shouldn't be taking a full-time job during their school years. They should just be doing a part-time job with a CPT for a couple of semesters, and then saving their whole 3 years of OPT, if they're a STEM major, for when they graduate. That's correct?
That's what I recommend, only because we don't get that full-time back. So if they're okay with working part-time, I would recommend part-time and keep that OPT for the end so that you have more time, to find a job, whether it's 1 year or 3 years. When it comes to China, that's always a 50-50 shot again. I have not, after COVID, China just opening back up, I have not seen issues with visas being issued to Chinese students. I think that America is very desperate for them to come back in a way because our enrollment is still very low. Financially, they're a big asset to a university. So I have not seen any decline in that. So I don't think there would be any kickback on that.
Oh, thank you.
I have a simple follow-up question, and I know Susie's got her hand raised and Melissa has a question, so I'll go to them. But Patricia brought up a good point. So Drexel, Northeastern. So how does the co-op fit with all of this for internationals? Because when we tour these schools, we talk to them, we're told, yes, international students can do co-ops, but what does that displace, if anything? Sorry.
So it will usually be CPT, which again is issued by the school, and it'll just say that it is part of their bachelor's degree. It's part of the program that Drexel does. It's not an issue. OIS will approve it and just add it to their I-20, and then they're free to work.
Okay, thank you. Is there a limitation to this, how many co-ops or et cetera?
That depends on the school, but if it's during the school year and they're enrolled full time, then there is no limitation. Like if they're in an undergraduate program for 8 years because they keep taking classes over and over again, then they can still do CPT every time. There's no limit to that.
Thank you. Thank you. So Melissa is asking, are STEM extensions to OPT easily granted, almost automatic, provided the F1 student has performed satisfactorily? Or are they tricky to obtain?
Nothing is ever guaranteed with immigration. Again, this has to be the company that for the first year has to submit documents that their progress is acceptable. Then usually it's not an issue. So that is something that the student should keep track of with the company, that they submit those things on time. Usually the student reviews the forms to see what the company is writing, and then always just make sure you meet those deadlines, that they apply for an extension with the OIS office on time or earlier. Let's see, usually again, 90 days before it expires, I would be in there and say, how quickly can I send this? How quickly can you help me? Because once you wait and it takes longer, then you won't be able to work until you get that extension. So
Thank you. Susie, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much, Anja, for this presentation. It's really good. In my experience in talking to my students who enroll, they're sadly like just really let down by, say, international student orientation. They don't you don't get this information. Is in my experience. My experience is very limited, but I'm talking about state universities, large state universities, small liberal arts colleges,
right.
public, private. They're just not getting this information. It's just not out there. It's sort of a black hole. And I have guided my students, if their international student services office has been incomplete with this information, to go to BRASA, the Brazilian student group, which is international, and they're very, very supportive. All the information that I've been able to find out is I've been through students who've gotten their information through BRASA. So I feel like there's a big lack in understanding this hurdle for students on the parts of universities.
So what I will say to that is I 1000% agree, which is I think why I got into this field in the first place, because I was very disappointed in my own track as a student. And I did most of these things myself back in the day. But also back in the day, there was no such thing as an international student office. I was one by myself. So I think, to be honest, if somebody works in an office like that and isn't international, it's hard for them to relate, right? Because they don't really see the importance, or they're like, oh, you can do that on Google or whatever it might be. So sometimes it's just educating, the school. And so what I find about Fordham right now, I was also struggling with the OIS office a little bit, because there seemed to have been no urgency for the orientation. That is something Monica, actually, my boss, just started a few years ago, which wasn't in place at all. So sometimes it takes sort of an international admissions team to go in there and say, hi, this is what we hear on the road, and this is what you don't have, and this is what other schools have. So it is unfortunate, but I do think it comes from a lack of being able to relate if you have never gone through it yourself. But I certainly think that is a huge part of orientation. Employment is something we even hear on the road before students even apply, right? Because that eventually they want to get some work experience. That's why they come. They don't just come for education. So yes, I agree with you, and it is a very fortunate thing. And I think sometimes when I go to NAFSA, we bring that up with other schools, or we'll do workshops with universities on these things and the importance of international student orientation. So again, I think it's a process, right? I think it's for people in those offices to understand what international students actually go through, and that's why I like them hiring international staff. People that have been international students that can relate to those things. So yes, it is a very unfortunate lack in the system. I agree.
We have two hands up, Monica and Tim, or whichever one of you wants to go first.
Okay, I'm sorry to beat this over. I need to understand what you said with the CPT for like co-ops. You can do that full time because that's part of your education.
Yeah.
But before that, if I understood, you said to not take time off the OPT, to only do part-time for CPT.
Right. So co-ops
you do full-time and take a class at night?
Yes, you can take a class anytime.
Right. So you could always work CPT full-time for co-op or other reasons, as long as you're taking one class.
Right. So co-op is a little bit different, right? There are a few universities that do co-op, right? Not everybody does that, but it is part of the bachelor's degree curriculum. So again, that Office of International Student Services at that office will do hopefully some sort of introduction or presentation to international students on co-op. So they study for a few years, then they work for a few years. That is all part of their degree. So that will all be entered into the I-20 through that Office of International Student Services. Usually it can be full-time, it doesn't have to be. Other schools say if you're international, it's part-time, because otherwise it's OPT. So again, that is something they have to work with their international student service offices on to see what those schools' regulations are when it comes to their co-op. But yes, they have to be enrolled in a class during that semester, and usually they are, or the co-op is considered to be the class, right? Some schools make that a course. The co-op experience is a course, and then that is the class that they're paying for. They're always still paying something to the university, because that's just what universities do. So whatever that structure is within that school, that is what the Office of International Student Services will do with the I-20 to keep it valid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I know Timur is going to go next, but just to review the schools that have this policy in the United States. So I know Northeastern, Drexel. Let's just list them if you guys know others, just so for reference. Are you aware of any more with that co-op structure?
University of Cincinnati.
Thank
I
you.
was going to say Cincinnati does it, and then also some of the community colleges that have international students, they do it as well. So.
And that's pretty much it. So it's not a lot of schools.
Not much. It's not much. No.
RPI. Melissa says RPI. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. I think your child is there, so you know for sure. Yep, there you go. Timur, please go ahead.
Anja, I was just going to ask, when you think this stage of your presentation is done, would you be able to go into the H1 application process as well, which is the stage after the OPT, when they should apply? Do they have to go through their school again, or do they just deal with their employer? And when the earliest and when the latest they have to start that application?
Yes, I can do that at any point. If anybody still has questions about OPT or CPT, or we want to move on to the really fun part of H1B.
Harvey has one. He just raised his hand.
Yes. Hi, Anja. Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure.
I had a question about the course that students are usually enrolled in to access CPT. Is that course, are students actually paying for that course through the university, or is that kind of like a free, because it's not really, they're not really learning anything through that course, right? It's just kind of a course that allows them to access CPT, or am I?
Right. No, it's actually a class. Like they could take any class in their requirement for their major. So they have to be, it's not a CPT class. It is like a school offer class that they need. So marketing 101, finance 102, and they will have to go to class while they're working. So they have to do both. So that's why, it's usually easy to do CPT part-time while you're in school because you're already enrolled. In the summer, then you have to take one of the classes required for you to graduate that's still related to your major. So they couldn't take social science in the summer and work full-time. They would have to take a business class if they are in the business field. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's not a CPT course. It is a regular school course required, so they will pay for it, but it also comes off their requirement list. So it's not really wasted money in that sense because they have to take the course anyways, but they get to work at the same time.
And this is for this summer, but is this also the same for the fall and the winter, or do they not need to take any CPT?
Well, they always have to be enrolled in the fall and the winter, right? So that they always have to be full time. So some of those courses will be related to their major. So that's automatic. That's fine. But in the summer, they have to enroll in a course that is related to their major. That is part of their requirement courses.
Okay, thank you.
Super helpful. Any others? Anja, thank you. You're gracious with all the responses.
No worries. It's only.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, Anja. This presentation. I just want to clarify something. So the co-op and the OPT are not the same thing, right?
Correct. Co-op is something that is part of the school's curriculum, or
Okay.
Yes. OPT is something that you can or cannot do at the end of your studies that the government allows you to stay one more year.
Yeah. Okay. Because I have a student at Drexel now. He's finishing his co-op.
Okay.
So now he's allowed to apply for his OPT.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you so much.
I think we should at some point schedule a follow-up and invite a couple of these schools, international offices. Northeastern would be really interesting. Drexel is very established, but Melissa suggested a few more, and so did Maria. It would be a really good idea. And I also think, please correct me if I'm wrong, this particular format that's open, that's not organization based, but open to those around the world is a good format. So we can, do it independently and just for those of us interested as well. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
I see thumbs up. Thank you, Patricia. Okay, we'll do that. Timur, back to your question was Did we address that?
I mean, H-1B.
H-1B?
Okay, we're ready for H-1B.
We
Okay,
are.
so the H-1B is the work visa that comes after being a student, right? You go from being a student, OPT, H-1B, hopefully green card, hopefully citizenship if that's what you seek. So it is a step-by-step process. So the H-1B has been changed many times over the years, depending on, again, who's the president. It has been reduced to 65,000 per year. That is the number of H-1Bs that is being awarded. Now, there are certain things. Number one, it has to be a company-sponsored visa, which means it has to be paid for by the company, not the student. The fee is quote unquote only $5,000. So it's not as excessive as some companies, again, think going into it that it is. Usually a company will use an immigration lawyer and the student or the applicant will pay for the lawyer and the company will pay the fee. So those are usually the ways that they work around paying for everything. Again, it's not a complicated process, but it's so limiting because there's only 65,000 awarded and over 15 million people apply. There are limitations to countries. There are certain amounts that are given to students from India. Sometimes China doesn't qualify at all because they already have a lot of different types of L or O work visas. So Mexico only gets a few numbers. So it just depends on where the student is from. But that's why the lawyer comes in handy. The way to apply for an H-1B, again, it goes to a lawyer. But what the company has to do that is a little bit more complicated is to prove or say, why am I hiring student A from Taiwan over student B from Ohio? Why would I not hire an American? So that is the tricky part. So that's why we say it is a visa for specialty occupations. So usually the exemption to this visa are things like teachers in physics or a Chinese student that teaches Mandarin because it's hard to find an American to teach those things, or proficient, therefore they're a better fit. So it is for the lawyer to figure out how to prove to the government that this person is a better fit than an American citizen. And that is the hard part. The job has to be posted publicly. Other people have to apply. You have to interview other people. So companies aren't always as committed to sponsoring H-1Bs because it can be a bit daunting, the amount of work that they have to do. But if they really want somebody, especially in the STEM field or in education, they will certainly go for it. It is a lottery system. So the first step is to apply. And then sometimes you don't even get chosen to be reviewed, again, because of the numbers. So unfortunately, it is a hit or miss. And it is extremely difficult to get picked if you're just basically applying for accounting, because there are 5 million other people applying for accounting. And then there's all the Americans having accounting degrees. So unfortunately, I can't tell you what the magic thing is that will get it approved, because there is no such thing. It is literally a lottery, and then they are being reviewed, and then they either get it or they don't. STEM is obviously much easier because there's a lack in the United States of people working in the STEM field, which is why it is so popular with international students. But every H-1B visa is due April 1st. That is the only day that the application can be submitted. It has to be April 1st. So then you're looking at some issues with, for example, OPT. Depending on when a student started, did they graduate in January? Did you graduate in December? Did they start their OPT over the summer? Because they have to be able to be in the country and still be on OPT while that H-1B is being reviewed. Otherwise, they have to leave, and then that's being... So it's a very tricky timeline, but that, again, is why the company uses an immigration lawyer, because there's a lot of different nuances to that you need to submit. So, but the application is always due April 1st, and usually, traditionally, you get an approval around the time of Thanksgiving. So that's or a denial you get right away. So usually the time is about April to Thanksgiving before a student gets the final approval, while a visa has been, or a review is pending. So yeah, it's a bit daunting. Students are very afraid of it. Companies are afraid of it. It is a very overwhelming process. it's very uncertain because there are so little numbers, so many applicants. And again, a lottery system is not helpful because unless you have some sort of specialty occupation, it's very difficult to make yourself stand out as an English major or a journalism major. That's why most people go to graduate school, because sometimes masters are being treated, preferably because you already have an advanced degree. So that's the tricky part.
Thank you. This was
Just one little question, Anja. The sponsor for the H-1B visa doesn't have to be the same company that the student has been doing the OPT, right? It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
No, could be anybody. Anybody that wants to sponsor you can sponsor you.
Thank you.
And Harvey's asking if there's exceptions from that cap. He thinks maybe universities, education research, nonprofits, and such.
So usually like the field, something like where you are a specialty occupation, like a teacher, again, like if you're teaching Mandarin or physics, if you are in the science field, then yes, there's a cap. So sometimes those are pulled for preference. Those get pulled first and reviewed. But again, you have to prove that you're not hiring the American physicist. Why are you hiring somebody from another country? So that's the tricky part.
Anja, you've been very gracious. So if you know, we have a subject matter expert, who to reach out to, because Anja does consulting with this too, right? Am I correct, Anja?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you for that. So if you want to connect with her on LinkedIn, I could recommend that you do. And I know it's the top of the hour, so for those of you with meetings in the next hour, we will conclude here. And I will place the recording on our Admittance Education YouTube channel, so you can go back and review if you've missed anything.
I will also put my email in the chat if anybody needs my email.
Thank you. So she's putting her. Thank you, Anja. We so appreciate this, and everybody, please note her contact information.
Thank you guys for joining. I'm very excited. Everybody wants to support. It's my passion. So if you need help with immigration, please let me know.
Will do. Will do. Thank you, Anja.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.